They're different. I mean, to me, it looks like they're very different than the Virginians and the Maryland planters, who are. I mean, by the eve of the Revolution, Tidewater, Virginia land is becoming exhausted, and really the more money is being made in the Piedmont region or upriver, and places like Mount Vernon. Washington is a very good example. 1769, Washington abandoned tobacco altogether, decided it wasn't a thing to grow, then got into wheat in a big way. Wheat had largely taken over the larger plantations on the eastern shore of Maryland by the time of the Revolution. So there's a change in Chesapeake agriculture going on. Those who aren't participating in it are losing out in a big way. They're sliding deeply into debt, tobacco planters in the 1760s and early 1770s. And so when they talk about slavery the British taxation is equal to slavery, and the British are trying to enslave them. They know what being slaves to debt are already in Virginia, these tobacco planters, and the revolutionary movement is, for many of them, a way to resist British taxation, but to resist being reduced to what they regard as a state of slavery by the imposition of British taxes at a time when they're already feeling an enormous pinch, the contraction in the value of the tobacco market.
Well, see, that wasn't happening in South Carolina. The two major crops in South Carolina, rice and indigo. Indigo, of course, this is another reason. Why did they rebel? They were exporting 1 million pounds of indigo to England, and it was a special enumerated good, and they also got a bounty from the Parliament for producing indigo within the British Empire. Rice didn't wear out the land because every time you flooded the fields, you brought in fresh nutrients. So that wasn't a problem like they had it. So the rice culture had expanded as far as it could. In the backcountry around Orangeburg, South Carolina grew enough wheat. South Carolina was actually exporting wheat on the eve of the Revolution. So its economy is expanding. They're looking into anything that'll make money, whether it's cattle.
But here's the difference. In Virginia, they're hoping that tobacco can be pressed westward and can be and they're imagining tobacco as a crop in the Ohio Valley, certainly in Kentucky, where it will become an important crop when Virginians settle there. Rice, and to a lesser extent indigo, those are pretty confined to coastal regions, aren't they?
Well, indigo can go a little bit inland. Of what made South Carolina after the Revolution, of course, was the development of cotton, and cotton culture started in the late 1780s after the Revolution, and that spread westward through Carolina and then into Georgia and the lower South. South Carolina was really the first great cotton state, but that didn't happen until after the end of the Revolution.
I mean, is it true the cultivation of cotton is confined largely to some of the Sea Islands right on the coast?
Well, Sea Island cotton is, but with the development of the cotton gin, if we throw in a plug for Nathaniel Green, maybe on his plantation in Georgia, that made the possibility of developing green seed or upland cotton, which has a very tight fiber, and you need something like a gin to separate the fiber from the seed. Sea Island cotton is so long and silky that you can separate it by hand, and
you almost shake the seeds out of Sea Island cotton.
Yeah.
I want to come back to that point because we'll talk a little bit later, because the expansion of cotton cultivation is something nobody, I think, on the eve of the Revolution is expecting.
No, see, actually, or ironically, when Carolina was still a proprietary colony for the first 50 years, they had an experimental garden. As I would say, they had a home extension service. And they tried cotton, upland cotton, and it just didn't work. And then 130 years later, boom, I mean, literally. The cotton boom made the first great fortunes really after the Revolution.